a couple of my friends came out to me. They're like, I want to be like Ruth when I grow up. She is awesome, So, she was just amazing. I couldn't have asked for. Part of me was so sad to see that airplane go. I grew really attached to this airplane and the process of getting it done. And I couldn't have been happier to who it went to. I just really couldn't have been happier.
You're listening to the Wild Blue Podcast, where, along with my co-host and good friend Todd Mitten, we shoot the breeze with other aviation professionals, cover topics important to aircraft owners, and just generally have some lighthearted fun with all things aviation. I'm Chris Kirk, and in this episode, we talk with my son Ethan about a recently completed project where we saved a 1975 Piper Cherokee 140 from the scrapyard and then brought it back to flying status. We hope you enjoy the show and maybe learn something too. If you'd rather see this conversation on video, head over to our YouTube channel at Fly Wild Blue.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wild Blue Podcast, along with Chris Kirk. My name's Todd Mitten. We're certainly glad to have you on board today, and looking forward to talking about a Piper Cherokee. Isn't that right, Chris?
Yeah, Todd. This is cool. This is a project we did. Well, I guess it all started kind of coming about almost a year ago, wasn't it?
A year ago.
Yeah. Well, also with us today is Ethan Kirk, and Ethan was a key player in the restoration of what became November 816 Whiskey Alpha, 1975 Piper Cherokee 140. So, Ethan, take us back to when was that originally? March, you think, of last year? When did you first?
It was February. It was actually right about this time of year. It might even have been the 17th of February. Last year, so a little recap. I've been on the show before, and thank you guys both for having me again. But I work for ATD Flight Systems at the downtown airport, and what a previous leaseback owner of an aircraft approached ATD and said, "Hey, I have an airplane. It hasn't flown in years, and I want to sell it for parts because you guys deal with PA-28s all day, every day. I want to sell this airplane for parts. It's got the Ram STC, so it's a PA-28 140 with a 160 horse engine." And he was dead set on selling it for parts. And I had asked him a couple of questions. His name is Bob, super nice guy. And, we couldn't have done any of this without him and his willingness to let us do this and working with us on this. But Bob and I had a couple conversations about the airplane, and he was like, "Yeah, it's been in hangar G12." And I'm like, well, my dad's hangar is G10, and we always had a saying that, for certain, we could park our airplane or our cars in front of G12 and never have anybody tell us, "Hey, we're trying to get our airplane out of here." And now I found out why. So the airplane had sat in a hangar. It was annualed last in 2009. And it had 0.1 hours tack before it was put into this hangar for its long sleep, if you will. Through some complications after the financial crash of 2008, or medical issues, or whatever it was, or just lack of ability to fly, Bob took it off of lease back at ATD and put it in the hangar with the plans to eventually get back out to it and fly. Unfortunately at the time, the airplane was called 33337. Unfortunately for the airplane, it never saw the skies again with that in number. As I dug through the records of this airplane, figuring out what all had been done, all the STCs, all the upgrades, all the previous maintenance, it was kind of like going back in time, because these logbook entries, I'm seeing people's names that I currently worked with 15 years later, seeing these logbook entries with their names on it. And it was really quite special. The airplane with the 33337 in number.
Too many threes and a seven.
Too many threes and a 7. That's what the KMKC tower used to call the airplane in the day, is instead of repeating 33337 every time in the pattern, because this was a flight school airplane, they would just say too many 3s and a 7 to abbreviate it. And so when I brought it up to our chief instructor at the flight school, he goes, "Oh my gosh, too many 3s and a 7. I remember that turd." And I think he put it just like that. He has a kind of a hatred for Hershey Bar Wing PA-28s. And so that is one of the reasons the school now is all swept wing design aircraft, because of his such dislike for them. But regardless, he mentioned it was a great plane when it was flying. So me and Bob and I decided that it was best to do a pre-buy inspection on the airplane, at least just to go look at it sitting in the hangar before we, decided anything of whether it was going to be a parts airplane or if it had the ability to be saved. And so I took a borescope, a mirror, a flashlight, and a drill, and went over there to hangar G12 at the downtown airport and opened up the door, and I was pleasantly surprised. The airplane was in much better shape than I expected it to be, and I completely expected it to just be a parts airplane, a husk of a former aircraft. And I opened up the door, and underneath about a quarter inch of dust that had accumulated in that hangar over the last 15 years was a remarkably good looking, clean example of a PA-28 140. And the three big things we wanted to look at, obviously it was going to need every seal throughout the airframe possible. The tanks were going to have to be pulled, et cetera, et cetera. After approaching Chris, my dad, about buying the aircraft, we decided that it was best to have some stipulations before buying the aircraft. One being that the aircraft must pass an eddy current inspection on the wing spars, for those of you that have PA-28s, or as the FAA is trying to expand the AD to applicable PA-32s, the Piper wing spar inspection is of 2 bolt holes on the outboard most spar that tend to, over time, either waller or crack. And so it needed to pass this inspection. It needed to pass the 2020 AD inspection for the main and rear spar inspection. And it needed to start, which, after borescoping the cylinders, I was incredibly surprised to find 0 pitting and 0 internal corrosion in the cylinders, and was extremely excited by that. So with a little bit of work and an air compressor to fill up the tires so we could roll out the incredibly dry rotted tires of the airplane out into the sunlight, we were able to get it fired up with surprisingly very little effort. I pickled the cylinders to make sure they had lubrication, made sure to pre-oil the engine, cleaned the original spark plugs and shoved them back in, didn't touch the mags, the carburetor, or anything else, and fired the airplane up. And it ran surprisingly well. And so we decided to purchase the airplane, and over the next, I want to say it's about 6 months, we put the aircraft through an extremely extensive annual, and then worked on finding a buyer for the aircraft.
I think
don't forget though that one of the stipulations on there was that we wanted to have Todd be a part of this.
Yes,
because it's Todd. I mean,
it was without my guidance and everything. I mean, nothing
couldn't have been done. Couldn't have been done.
It's a great airplane, though. I think one of the things when you did introduce me to this airplane that impressed me so much was, this is the last year they made the Cherokee 140. It's a 1975. So, a lot of those older Cherokees, many of us have flown them, and you have the instruments all.
The butterfly yokes.
This airplane was just practically a Piper Warrior, except it had the Hershey Bar wing. It has the 160 horsepower engine. It had STC for that. It had the standard 6-pack. it just felt like you were getting in a Warrior pretty much. And so the opportunity was there to bring an airplane back to life that needed to come back to life.
It deserved it.
Yeah, it was not one that should have just been parted out. And so I think that was a smart thing to do, and we'll get eventually to where it's at now. But Chris, what did you think when you used to own a Cherokee? Did you own a Cherokee one?
Yeah, that was just a lot of this was kind of nostalgia for me because you'd had that Cherokee 180, and then the first airplane I ever bought was a Cherokee 140. In fact, I took Erica, my wife, Ethan's mom, on our first date in that airplane. So there was a lot of kind of nostalgia. And it was a '68 model, so it did have it had the overhead trim crank, and it had the butterfly yokes and everything. 596.
You're still making excuses for that landing too, but that's
I don't think we need to touch on that. But
I think we do. That's a pretty key part of this story.
Well, landing is not the proper term.
It would be landings. That's correct. You had multiple there.
It's been a while.
I didn't mean to interrupt you on that. You were talking about your old Cherokee. What were you going to say?
There's a lot of nostalgia, and the opportunity. Todd and you and I have been talking about doing something like this, and when it came, and it's like, man, we can do this with Ethan. This would be so cool to be able to do. So it was kind of a no-brainer.
I think one of the big sale points for my dad and I was we had talked for years. We're talking years about either doing a factory 5 kit car or a Vans RV 8, 7,
which I'd still
12,
like to do,
whatever. And we would still like to do it. But during the time that this came available was when Vans filed for bankruptcy. And so they put all of their kits on a hold until further notice. Hold on a second. My computer's about to die. So.
Where did he go?
Yeah, there we go.
Hey, it's a live production, folks.
It is.
So we really wanted a father-son project, and we had a lot of fun with it. During the annual, besides the lovely landings that my father had in the airplane, we had lots of what you could consider teachable moments. One of which where he had never used a click-type torque wrench, and I was showing him how to replace brake linings. And as those of you that have used a click-type torque wrench know, when you set your torque, which on the PA-20
we can just accelerate right through this part here.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd love to. Is like 78 inch-pounds, and the torque wrench will click. And well, he went right on past that click and kept right on going until that bolt snapped right off. So lots of real fun teachable moments, and lots of really good bonding for us. That was that I wouldn't have traded for the world.
I have to honestly say, I think I learned far more than Ethan did on this whole project. I learned, there was a lot to learn, and it was fun. I've always been around airplanes and worked on them a little bit here and there, but nothing other than just.
It was cool because it was not only the engine. It was the airframe. It was the interior. Heck, it was the radios. It was the whole package. Everything needed attention, and everything got attention. Mm-hmm. I think that people might be interested to know you were the first, I think, to taxi it and everything, Chris, and then we can talk a little bit about that, and also the early flights and how we did all that.
Yeah, so I actually did a taxi when we first got it, just to verify initial, findings and as far as maintenance goes. But we wanted, before the annual was complete, to do several high-speed taxis because, again, this airplane had sat for a long time, and that's where Chris and Todd came instrumental.
Well, we even did before that, though. Me and Ethan, I think it was me and Ethan, didn't we go out and just we broke in the brakes because we had new rotors,
new linings, new
wheels, everything. But hey, one thing I want to bring up here real quick, and that if you can see this on the video, but if you are interested in reading a little bit more about this, Ethan and I did an article in the Piper Flyer magazine, which is right here. It's the December 2024 issue. And so it's pretty cool. We had the opportunity to write gosh, they gave us 2,000 or 3,000 words. So we had a lot of fun writing this and putting it together for them and sending them in some pictures. But that's online too at the piperflyer.com. You can check that out. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, we did go into we did the high speed taxis. I think we did 3. We do at least 3 high speed.
We did 3 because we did 4 because our first 2, we found a very large problem that we needed to immediately address. So as a quick rundown of everything we did to the airplane got the fuel tanks removed. Everything in the fuel tanks was resealed.
So let me show a picture here real quick while you're talking about those fuel tanks, because we did that for that
the 2020. Right? Well, service bulletin in conjunction with the 2020 Piper Spar AD, which compliance is either by using a borescope. Or in our case, we wanted to remove the tanks because after sitting for 15 years, the gasket seal on the sending unit was 100% shot, and instead of chasing leaks, it gave us an opportunity to remove it and do the AD along with the Piper service bulletin, which I don't remember the number, but which is an anti-corrosion
1161 maybe. I don't know, but
yeah, I'd have to go back and look. But we sprayed an anti-corrosion spray in the wings. It's an AV8 as the Piper service bulletin calls for. The gear got entirely rebuilt, new shims, new seals, new hydraulic fluid. Same thing with the brakes. All the master cylinders were out and resealed. Several hoses were replaced. Thankfully, somebody previously had complied with the Type D oil hoses. The engine got new magnetos, new fuel pump, new carburetor, new spark plugs, new leads. So everything that you could consider a rubber item or a seal or anything that was not a hard piece of metal pretty much got replaced.
Yeah, expendable or a time-based thing, such as a magneto.
New rear window.
Oh yeah, we had one of the windows, which funny story on that rear window, the left rear window in that aircraft during the pre-buy, I just noted that it was extremely crazed. I mean, you couldn't see out of it. It was crazing so bad. And when I went to remove it, those windows are supposed to be in acrylic, and there was a plexiglass piece in there instead of acrylic. So it was kind of one of those, well, that's not really supposed to be in there. So we did the right thing. So we did the right thing and put the proper Piper part number in. But I mean, just an incredible amount of work went into it. And Tom, my boss, helped us out, and it wouldn't have been able to be done without him. And I'm so very thankful for all of the work and help he did in coaching me and guiding me and making sure that, all of our ADs were up to date and what we had to comply with and this, that, and the other. So
you touched on it, but we went so far as to even replace the N number. And that was, one of the things that I think many of our listeners and viewers realize is that now the FAA tracks the registered, it used to be once an airplane is registered, it was just forever registered. It seemed like they never cared, but now you have to re-register your airplane I believe it's now 7 years. They started 3 years, so that's silly. So 7 years, but this airplane was no longer registered, but unbelievably, somebody had actually grabbed that N number 33337. And out of pure coincidence, the guy was still here in the Kansas City area. And I contacted him and I'm like, did you really need that N number? What was the deal? And no, actually it went back to his dad. It had an old something. It was something old. I mean, from the 40, maybe a Luscombe or something.
Or something like that.
Yeah, something. And he'd built another airplane or a similar airplane or refurbished one and wanted that very end number just out of pure coincidence. And so we said, well, all right, what can we go ahead and use? What's an available end number? And we picked the 816 Whiskey Alpha because the area code here in Kansas City is 816, and the Wild Blue Aircraft is the WA on there. So that was the impetus for our new end number, which is how we ultimately sold the airplane.
6 Whiskey Alpha. That was a good call sign.
Yep.
Yeah. Except come to find out, as I'm flying on the first test flight, there's a 6 Alpha Whiskey or something like that.
and a 8 Kilo Whiskey. So there was.
So you took that thing up, Chris, and here in Kansas City, you were the lucky one that got to fly it first. And if you're not familiar with the Kansas City downtown airport, it's very packed in with a lot of buildings and not a forgiving area. So tell us about your first foray in the air for that airplane, Chris.
Yeah. So we can also touch base on that first high speed taxi.
So Ethan and I go out there we go out there and do the first high speed taxi. And Todd and I had come up with a pretty good plan, and we consulted with Ethan on how, what we needed to do and what we needed to be looking at. And, we weren't really willing to kind of wing it, so to speak. We wanted to make sure that we were going about it with a good methodology. And so we did a number of high-speed taxis, the first of which Ethan and I go out there, and we just did a good run-up on the airplane. And, we're just interested in the brakes. We're interested in the acceleration of the plane. We're interested in, how it stops, and just to get a feel for the airplane. And I'm so glad that we did this, because he and I taxied down there and we ran it up, and we were taking off to the north. So runway 1 there in downtown. And so we got it up to, I think I got up to full power, but then I brought it back, and we wanted to get up to about 50 knots, was about as fast as we wanted it to go. And so we did that. And then, we got up to that speed, and I went ahead and pulled the power back. We started decelerating. Man, oh man, you talk about a nose wheel shimmy. I never felt anything like it. I really thought we were going to depart the side of the runway there.
It was so bad. We were concerned that it was going to break something else because of how violently, the engine mount or gear components. I mean, it was an extremely violent shimmy,
and it didn't matter what I did. If I pulled back on the yoke to try to get the weight off of the nose wheel, if I went forward on the yoke to try to get some weight on the nose wheel, no effect whatsoever. But we were finally able to get it down to a slow taxi speed, and then we taxied on in. And then Ethan did a little troubleshooting and quickly figured out. This is another thing that I learned. Why? Because shimmy damper was fine, but Ethan, tell what was causing this.
So there's actually a combination of 2 or 3 things. There was a slight not misalignment, but a shimming issue of the shimmy damper. One of the steering bungees, which on the PA-28s, they've got they're not a hard bar that connect the rudder pedals to the nose gear, but they have a series of bungees on the inside. One of those was extremely weaker than the other. And on top of that, the nose wheel, which I still have no idea how this happened, but the nose wheel was the tire, which are balanced for the valve stem to be in a certain spot, was exactly 180 degrees off of where it should have been with the valve stem. So instead of having the internally balanced weight in the tire that is supposed to go opposite of the valve stem to counteract the balance point, the weight of the valve stem in the tube, it was compounding on the tube and the valve stem side. So you had an extremely basically heavy spot on the tire. And so all 3 of those things, which in themselves are all minor things, but all 3 of those things just kind of compounded on each other. So we ended up fixing all of those, and then later on, we found that the rigging for the rudder after a couple test flights was the pedal height was wrong, the rudder rigging was wrong, and so completely ended up re-rigging the airplane back to factory specs to get that nice center ball true indication while flying.
But after you got that done, we did at least two more high-speed taxis. I think, Todd, you went out and did one, didn't you? Trying to remember.
I did a high-speed taxi test.
But it worked out great. And then we got ready for that first flight, and our whole goal, like Todd was saying, that, the airport, man, there's just stuff everywhere. You got buildings, you got a river, which honestly, in some cases is almost the best place to land the airplane if you lose an engine. We got a rail yard, we got a General Motors plant, we got everything, towers everywhere. It's just a very landlocked, somewhat waterlocked airport. But our plan was to get it airborne, and then 3,500 feet, which just is right below the Class Bravo airspace for MCI, to just orbit over the top of the field for an hour or so and let, just see how things are running. And then, of course, we were going to change the oil after that too. But that first flight taking off to the south, I got maybe 400 feet airborne. It was great to get it airborne. But then, boom, the red light in front of me comes on. The vacuum failed. So, that vacuum was old. So I came back around and, we landed. I landed and we ordered a new vacuum pump, and Ethan put that on, and that was fine. And so then the next, I think I did at least one, if not two more test flights up there. And I just, man, if you get
burned
on,
it in.
There's just
he looked like he was a part of the Kansas City Speedway out there, just left turn.
The big problem eventually became one of the last real hurdles to overcome was the idle would not.
Oh yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
Below about 1,000 RPMs. Every once in a while, I get a little below 900. It's pretty shocking how hard it is to fly a general aviation fixed pitch prop airplane when you can't get it to idle below somewhere around 1,000 RPM. It just throws you completely off. I mean, it's just like there's something that's not right here. You feel like you're forcing the airplane, and that took a while. That was a bit of a struggle. How did you finally resolve that odd problem?
We had an issue with the cable, the control cable for the carburetor. We ended up finding that one of the biggest drawbacks besides the Hershey bar wing to the 140 platform or the 160 or the 180 platform is the exhaust. And anybody that works on them will tell you the exhaust is on the Warrior and the Archer is so much far superior than the ones on the 140s and 160s. And part of that is because on the Warriors, it sits in front of the carburetor. On the Cherokees, it sits behind the carburetor up against the firewall. And you'll actually see on some really poor examples of 140s, they will, or just older examples of 140s, they will have holes in the stainless steel firewall and patches over them because of corrosion caused by the exhaust. But in that, it makes the area around the exhaust extremely tight. I mean, we're not talking Saratoga tight, but for a PA-28, it's pretty cramped up in there with some of the control cables that immediately come out of the firewall and have to do almost a 90-degree turn down to make a 60-degree turn back up to make another 30-degree turn back down so they can hit the carburetor correctly. And we found that one of the original steel wound cables was rubbing just ever so slightly on the exhaust, where it was not actually rubbing if you were doing an inspection. It wasn't rubbing if you were at idle. It was only intermittently rubbing during flight. And over time, this had caused a catch spot in the cable, and the cable would not go all the way back to idle. And it appeared, that when I would sit there and if you pulled hard enough, it would hit the idle stop. So on the ground, I would do it, after this first issue where we couldn't get the idle down, I did an inspection. Like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. I'm hitting my idle stop here. I'm hitting my full power stop there. So we're hitting our stops. So this is, and I do a run up and couldn't duplicate the issue. So then it'd go back up and fly. And like Todd said, this is something that we were kind of battling for a little while. So I finally bit the bullet, and unfortunately cables are a little bit more pricey than what I think they should be worth given the simplicity of them. But McFarland Aviation supplied us with an upgraded unit to the factory braided one. We put that in and thus had no problems after.
So ultimately we wondered, well, how should we sell this airplane? That was the goal. And I had previously been talking to a friend of mine who happens to be an airline pilot, and she was wanting to get back into general aviation. And I had mentioned this airplane to her, not really thinking very seriously that she might ultimately have an interest. And as time went on, she got more interested in it. We talked about the airplane because she felt she could trust us. And she came up because she didn't want to, she lives in Florida, didn't want to come all the way to Kansas City if it wasn't going to be worth her while. And I said, well, no, I know Ethan has worked hard and we've replaced everything on this airplane of any significance. And so she came up, and it just really worked out really neat, didn't it, Chris? I mean, we ultimately, it was just a nice, fair deal all around for everyone. And
yeah, I think she's flying it quite a bit, isn't she?
And she flies a lot and loves it. And
she's done a couple things. I think they had to do an alternator, which, in hindsight, looking back, I mean, it worked when we were flying it. And I'm, to be honest with you, surprised it made she immediately, once she picked it up, flew it 15 hours to Florida. And so, with no issues, airplane flew true. She was 8.5 gallons an hour at 100.
That's one of the best parts of the whole story is that, yeah. I mean, she left out of here.
Well, it wasn't 130 knots, I'll assure you that.
Yeah. She left out of here and flew several legs to, I can't remember, they stopped in South Georgia or somewhere the first night, and then on down to South Florida the next day. But just an unbelievable, just perfect. The weather was good. I mean, so many things had been done to that airplane that I think we all had a little bit of like, well, we think it's good. Everything we know is good. And that proved it right there. All those hours down to Florida, and they had a ball, and it was such a happy ending kind of a story, and still is. It's still providing fun for herself, her kids, and so on. So
the cool thing is it didn't get scrapped. It's flying.
Yeah. And I will say one of the best parts of it was, for me, was actually being able to go up and go fly in the thing. I mean, between starting this whole process and getting the airplane flying and then getting it to a point where my dad was comfortable me going up in the airplane, or more than one person being in the airplane at a time past the test flight stage, we were talking about 6 months or so. So, I mean, there had been a lot of just man hours in doing this. And, Todd and my dad, I taught them how to polish the paint, and they polished and waxed the airplane and made it looked sharp. I mean, it looked sharp. We used it at Challenge Air for a static display for ground school at Challenge Air at the downtown airport, and then finally me and my dad got to go up in it. We went out to Midwest National, and then we went and flew over Todd's house, and we went and flew over my parents' house, and I've got so many friends of mine that are CFIs, and they're all texting me going, "Are you in 6 Whiskey Alpha? That's so cool to see that airplane up and flying around." Because I mean, they had all been disconnected, but a part of the process. Because they'd be like, "What are you doing after work?" I'm like, well, "I'm going to go work on 6 Whiskey Alpha. I got to get that airplane done." So it was a very rewarding thing to do.
I wish we could find another one.
Let me show some pictures here real quick, and then because people that are watching this on YouTube can get a chance to see this. And so here is, that's Todd. Can you guys see that?
Yep, bleeding the brakes.
Todd and Ethan bleeding the brakes on this thing.
Which that's part probably 4 of bleeding the brakes. If anybody listening has ever bled Piper brakes, it is a process. And we did all 4 master cylinders and the parking brakes. So we bled at the master cylinders up in the cabin. And then I was confident that because of all that bleeding, there was air going down to the calipers. So we bled all the way down there. And then at the end, we ended up with some rock hard Piper brakes, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah, they worked. I mean, that plane just flew like a champ. It really did. So there it is, setting up for Challenge Air. You can see the new end number, and you can see how shiny that paint turned out. I mean, it just was incredible how once we got the dust and dirt off of it, and Todd got out there, and he and I put a lot of elbow grease into it, and we had a local vinyl shop come in and do the end numbers because they were. The stripes on it, everything was vinyl anyway.
Well, that's original. The stripes and that are original to us anyway.
Yeah. So
and then another note is that just while this photo's up is the wingtips that are STC'd wingtips that are on there from the previous owner. Somebody else did that, but we had to that aircraft last flew in 2009, and in 2009 there was not an ADS-B requirement.
Right.
And so that was one of our larger expenses, was doing the ADS-B, and we ended up doing ADS-B in and out through the UAVionics wingtip system, which also subsequently put nice LED wingtips on it. So it ended up working out great for us.
It really did. So there's another picture, kind of just a little. You see the sheen on this airplane, and not perfect by any stretch, but my gosh, it just turned. I think we were just all so pleased with the way that it looked and the way it turned out, and it was a good looking airplane. So there's me and Ethan the first time that we got to go fly it, and then there's Ethan there, and so.
my nice mechanic head from the day. I think I was part. I kind of feel bad for you, Dad, because I'm pretty sure I smelled like Skydrol because I believe I was working on the jet that day. So
yeah. We were in the dog days of summer. It was hot.
It was hot.
That was part of the reason we were kind of waiting to make sure everything was working well before we jumped in there. And it's a 140 after all. I mean, it's not. It's got its limitations with power. But there's Ethan and the new owner. So and she's just what a cool lady. She was just a lot of fun, and I hope she gets to enjoy that airplane for a long time.
And there were so many people, and she kind of stuck around the airport and met some of the CFI friends that I have, and a couple of my friends came out to me. They're like, "I want to be like Ruth when I grow up. She is awesome," So I mean, she was just amazing, and I couldn't have asked for. Part of me was so sad to see that airplane go. I mean, I grew really attached to this airplane and the process of getting it done. And I couldn't have been happier to who it went to. I mean, I just really couldn't have been happier.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a cool process. And again, if you have the chance, go to piperflyer.com. I know that they've got it where you can download the whole magazine. But the cover is, of course, the airplane that we did there, and 816 Whiskey Alpha. So, but guys, this has been a lot of fun. Just kind of hashing over this stuff because it's been a couple months since we've talked about it, and it's gosh, it was just, and like you said, Todd, I would love to do this again. It was just get all of us in there and maybe get Riley in on it, and just something that is just it's really less about the airplane than it is just about just the coolness of general aviation and the camaraderie and the relationships that it helps to build. It's just so much fun.
And I mean, there were so many people that were so ecstatic to see that airplane out and flying again. I mean, I can't tell you how many people were like, I remember when that airplane was, too many 3s and a 7. And, it was just, it was really, really a neat experience to get that airplane flying again with so much history at the downtown airport with it.
Well, you think about this. You were 8 years old when that airplane last flew.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while, it's been there a while. So
It had.
you kind of wonder, my gosh, it's been, and what's remarkable is the shape that it was still in after all those years. Because, my Saratoga, it sat for a long time as well. Man, the engine was not in the kind of shape that this 140's engine was in. So, but anyway, guys, this is awesome. Thank you. This is good.
Yep. Good times. Thank you, everybody.
So, please be sure to subscribe and share this podcast if you would. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. We're at 888-773-4249. The website is flywildblue.com. We just did a podcast here recently as well about our new maintenance arm of the business. So now aircraft sales as well as Wild Blue Aircraft Maintenance, which is actually the shirts that we're all sporting here right now is our maintenance shirts. So, but anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Blue Podcast. If you have an idea for a future episode, please drop us a line at planes@flywildblue.com. If you have questions about buying or selling an airplane, we'd love to hear from you. Our number is 888-773-4249. And please remember to subscribe to the podcast and to share it with others.